about a year and a half ago. Prior to that, I was in Chicago as the Chief Technology Officer for Motorola. So it's been a very, I would say, memorable moment for me to move here, because it's amazing how quickly women in the community in the Bay Area has accepted me to be part of the community. And that's really what this event is all about. How do we expand the community? How do we make the community much stronger? So for that, I would like to thank Working Mother for hosting this event and partnering with Cisco to make this happen. So what I want to do today is talk to you. I think I have 30 minutes? Yes. 30 minutes. I'll talk a little bit about technology, what some of the major transformations are in the world of technology, what would be some changes that we will see in the landscape of technology. I'll then switch gears a little bit and talk to you about women in technology. What has been the role of women in technology, and what would the role of women leaders, in a broader sense, not just in technology, be like in the future? How will our roles change as leaders, and especially as women leaders in the industry? I'll then switch gears again and share with you some of the lessons that I have learned as I've journeyed for the last 25 years in my career, and along the way got married and have a son now who's a teenager. And what's that all about? How do we keep everything integrated? And you will hear me talk more about integration rather than balance. And I think there is a difference between the two. Okay, so I'll try to do all that in the next 30 minutes of my life story in a nutshell. Stop me along the way. I want to make this interactive and make this much more of a dialogue. I'm sure some of the folks that are watching remotely will have an opportunity to figure out how to interact in the future. So with that, I'll start off by sharing with you some of the global technology trends. I travel quite a bit. I spend a lot of my time talking to customers, to analysts, and to media, and to our partners. So what am I hearing from around the world with respect to what some needs are, what some transformations are? How does that impact the backbone, essentially, of technology, which has been the backbone for the last 10 years and continued probably to play a primary role going forward in the future, the internet? What does it mean to the internet? What will be some changes that we will see? Then I'll talk a little bit, as I said, about women's role in this and more from my experience. Essentially, if you think about what is changing in our world, there are probably three major transformations. And I kind of think about this in the categories of the future of work, the future of connected life, and the future of computing. So if you think about the future of work, actually, if I can go back a slide, please. Okay. If you think about the future of work, one of the things that is changing in how work gets done is the role of collaboration. More and more companies as well as business processes are beginning to be broader than just the functions that we're in or the companies that we're in. We call it at Cisco intercompany collaboration. And if you think about collaboration, it's really started off in the manufacturing industry. You can say many years ago, the manufacturing industry pioneered this concept of extending the business processes to include some of their suppliers and some of their partners, right? And now many other industries are following suit. And so what does that mean for technology? What that means is as we develop applications and processes, we have to enable applications and processes that cross the boundaries of functions, cross the boundaries of corporations, sometimes cross the boundaries between private sector and public sector. And so this is going to be one of the big opportunities in how the future of work gets done. The second major transformation that's driving the nature of work is the emergence of millennials. So these are people born after the 1975 who've grown up with Web 2.0 as the primary center of their universe. And now I said I have a son, he's 16 years old. If I ask him how he thinks of the internet, it's to him about communities. It's where he forms friends, how he interacts with his friends, etc. And I'm sure it's the same for many of that generation of people. But as for us, it was more about communication. My generation grew up with email being the killer app. It was more of a transactory platform. And so that is changing in how work gets done. And as these people enter our workforce, and at Cisco, we expect that by 2010, 2011 time period, we'll have more millennials in our workforce than baby boomers. What does that mean? They're going to bring any device they like, right? I was recently in Washington, D.C. talking to many government agencies. They're dealing with the fact that people now want to expect and want to use their iPhone or any other device they're comfortable with to access government information, just like they interact with their favorite retailer. They don't see any difference between buying a book on Amazon and downloading a government application from a public agency. So there's that kind of transformation that we have to deal with. The next change in the way work gets done is this notion that I call of clusters of experts getting together to get work done. Right? It's more about, if you're an expert in a particular area, you choose what project to work on. And at Cisco, we have this concept of boards and councils and working groups. It's really, the notion is how do you bring experts together to work on something, regardless of where they reside in the organization. And we recently launched a pilot where we have introduced the concept of tagging expertise within an enterprise environment. So for myself, for instance, I could tag myself as a technologist, a Cornell alumni, somebody who's interested in art, somebody who's interested in poetry. So I would tag myself with my areas of expertise so that in the enterprise, if they need for that expertise, you can go find that experts and bring them into the process. And lastly, mobility. I often say that we don't go to work anymore, we simply do work. Right? This notion of being able to access your work applications from anywhere is becoming very prevalent, right? Think of it, I actually say that the term mobile internet will be redundant in a few years. Just like we don't say mobile email anymore, we just expect to have access to email, whether it's from a BlackBerry, iPhone, cell phone, or from a laptop on a fixed internet. We just say, I have email. You don't say, I have mobile email today and I have fixed email the other day. Similarly, internet access will become pervasive in the future. So with respect to the connected life space, again, mobility plays a huge role here. The other change that we are seeing is the notion of video and how we consume video. Started off with YouTube, thanks to YouTube to actually make the concept of user-generated content much broad and much more universal. But what is happening now is with the availability of on-demand content, the expectation is the way we consume content is going to be more community-driven, meaning there'll be content sharing applications that will become important in the future. So we have telepresence, which is really all about using video as an interactive mode to be there when you're not physically there. And how does that change healthcare and education? So what role does video change in connected life area in many segments that we've not thought about in the past? The other thing that changes the connected life concept is something that I call lifestyle optimization. So actually this was probably one of the boons of the economic downturn because of the fact that the world went into the economic crisis that we all did. There is now an increased focus on how do we apply technology to improve our lifestyles. So how does what we've done with IP networks and the internet apply to healthcare? How does it apply to education? How does it apply to governance? How does it apply to energy, smart grid? This week there's a big conference on smart grid. The US government expects to spend close to $75 billion in this space. So this will create a whole lot of new innovation with respect to connected life and what all that means. And yesterday I did an interview with CNBC, and one of the things that we were talking about is the future, 10 years, 15 years from now, if you think about it. How does our life change, and do we lose our privacy because now everything is being tracked? Our cars are going to have sensors and they're going to send signals to other cars on freeways so that we can avoid traffic congestion. That means somebody is tracking my car and somebody has that information somewhere, and what does that mean? So there's going to be huge implications with all this for security and privacy. The last transformation is in the area of future of computing. So if you think back to mainframes, mini computers, to the web more recently, the next disruption we'll see is with virtualization leading to cloud computing. The notion of changing or removing the applications away from the physical infrastructure, so you now as IT industry has much more flexibility in how applications get delivered on a broad basis. So those are some major transformations that will actually change